Hi, welcome to the June weather forecast. May was a very wet and cool month, but in the last few days things have changed markedly. It's finally t-shirt weather, but does it set the theme for the coming weeks, or is it nothing more than a blip? I'll begin by running the GFS sequence out to 10 days. Initially, it's a warm and dry picture across most of the UK, but in the short term, this area of low pressure pushes up from the southwest and it brings the likelihood of showery spells of rain, particularly to the western half of the UK, where some of them could indeed be quite heavy. Dry conditions then begin to reassert themselves. I think through the first weekend of the month, it's worth keeping an eye on what's happening to our south. You can see this area of low pressure bringing very heavy rain to parts of northern Italy and much of France. There is a suggestion from some computer models that wet weather will be flirting with southern counties of England for a time. It's uncertain, just something to keep an eye on. Next week, Atlantic frontal systems for a time bring the risk of rain to the northwest of the UK, with a good deal of dry weather elsewhere. But by the end of a 10-day period on this sequence, look at high pressure there building up from the Azores northeastwards strongly across most of the UK. The Atlantic influence increasingly becoming confined to the far northwest. So it's not a dry picture throughout according to this sequence, but all in all there is a good deal of fine weather to be found. In terms of the air mass profile, this is representative. I think it will of course vary from day to day, but on Tuesday, June the 8th, you can see the yellows and oranges over the southern half of the UK showing pretty warm air. The greens to the northwest there showing something cooler due to more of an Atlantic influence. Jet stream profile, very different to what we saw for much of May. It's now weaker, it's moving further northwest, and the UK is on its warmer southern side. And during much of the last month, the UK was of course on its cold northern side, so it's a big change in our weather. What that means in terms of 2 metre temperatures, this is the GFS forecast maximums for Saturday the 5th. I think it's reasonably representative of what it's showing through that 10-day period. They will, of course, fluctuate, but this is fairly average, I would suggest. Values of around 20, 22, 23 across the UK on Saturday the 5th of June. GFS, even after its recent upgrades, I think does tend to under-forecast maximum values a little bit still. Therefore, I've brought up the comparable chart from the UK Met Office model. What you can see is across England and Wales, values at 24, 25 Celsius, so it is warmer. Interestingly, heading up north into Scotland, if anything, values there being shown are slightly lower. I think that's probably due to it modelling a different air mass profile. Do the other deterministic models support a high pressure dominated scenario 10 days ahead? The ECM certainly does. The UK is there, slap bang under the middle of a big area of high pressure. Canadian model at the same time, it's a little different. The high pressure is centred perhaps a tad further north, but nonetheless it's the dominant feature of the UK's weather. So the deterministics generally going for a good deal of settled weather. I'll next take a look at the Ensemble data, of course, which is used to assess the probabilities of different outcomes. This is the European Ensemble plot showing air mass profile temperatures for London, goes out to 10 days. In the short term, they're pretty high, 12 Celsius. The average this time of year is around about 5. They then dip quite sharply to around about 6 Celsius. So even though it's a sharp dip there, they're still only falling to just still staying a little bit above the 30-year average. And then later on, you can see there's an upwards trend with the purple line suggesting it will be warming up again. Glasgow, it's very similar. If anything, the dip there is to a lower level. Around about the 7th of June, it's down to +3 Celsius. Just really maybe getting down to perhaps a little bit below the 30-year average for a short time. That was the European Ensemble. The GEFS is the equivalent from the USA. This chart goes out to 16 days ahead, and on the top half, the air mass profile is shown. It's for London, I should have said. Look at this. The mean there is staying above the 30-year average throughout the next 16 days. there's only really a very small number of runs which are taking it below that 30-year average. So it's pointing towards a higher degree of forecast confidence than would often be the case in terms of the air mass profile. Rainfall forecasts, well, it's not completely dry. You can see rain spikes appearing here, and they continue going further forwards. It's not looking very wet though, so I'd suggest a good deal of dry weather, but with some more showery interludes showing their hand there at times. Jumping up to Glasgow to see what's going on in the northwest of the UK. Once again, the air mass profile showing a mostly above average picture. There is more of a dip there around the 5th of June. That's when the Atlantic influence is really at its strongest probably. And you can see there's perhaps just a suggestion that the air mass profile will be dipping a little below the 30-year average just for a brief period of time, then recovers, and most of the runs keep it above that 30-year mean right through to the end. Rainfall, well, there is an ongoing risk. There are certainly more rain spikes appearing on this plot than there were on the London one, and that's consistent, I think, with more of an Atlantic influence in the northwest of the UK throughout the period. But it's not looking particularly wet by any means. Just to bring up the surface level pressure forecast table, brought up the London one to begin with. It's 16 days. Each column here summarises 1 day. Yellows and oranges are dominant right out to the 11th of June. There aren't any greens appearing before the 12th. The yellows and oranges, therefore, are suggesting that pressure will be tending to be above the average. The oranges are indicating high pressure. The yellows are mostly slightly above average. There are some in there a little bit below, but mostly slightly above. Towards the end of the period, in the last few days, there are some greens in the columns. Those are forecast runs which are going for lower pressure, but all in all, they are relatively small in number. Jumping up to Glasgow to see how it compares. Again, in the short term, it's all yellows and oranges. The difference there probably is later on, there's a greater signal for the green runs, which are lower pressure. So perhaps more of an Atlantic influence in the northwest, as I've been saying, throughout the period, but particularly there later on. Here's the days 10 to 15, 500 HPA height anomaly plot. So again, this maps closely to surface pressure. It is a different thing, but there's a close correlation. You can see over the UK, the yellows and oranges are strongly positive. Therefore, it's indicating the likelihood of higher than average pressure. Got to go out into the mid-Atlantic there to see a negative anomaly, and then way up to the northeast as well. But certainly over much of West Europe, it's a positive pressure anomaly which is likely to be showing itself through days 10 to 15 of June. Right, so that's the first half of June. What about the second half? Of course, as ever, forecast confidence does dip markedly. But this is interesting. It's the air mass profile for London from the GEFS 35-day model. I've blocked out the first half of the month because I've covered it already. But look at the second half from 15th of June onwards right into July. The mean is well above the 30-year average throughout that period. There's a strong signal there for upper air level temperatures to be remaining for most of the second half of the month above the 30-year average. It's quite unusual to see a signal as strong as that showing at this particular range. But in terms of pressure, there is something a little bit different here. We can see, again, I've blocked out the first half of the month, but there is a downwards trend, a weak downwards trend showing in pressure through the second half of June at times. 1,016 millibars is the approximate June average. We can see the means falling down to or a little bit below it at times. I think, therefore, it's suggesting a combination of warm upper level air, possibly lower surface pressure at times, could well be showery. There are some hints there of thundery conditions. I don't think it's looking like a washout by any means. I would expect there to be a good deal of dry weather, But there is that chance, that significant chance of more showery, as I say, possibly thundery interludes developing. Jumping up to Glasgow, again, the air mass profile chart shows 850 HPA temperatures remaining above the 30-year average for really throughout the second half of June. So again, quite a warm picture potentially. Pressure, similar story to the London one. Pressure is generally just slightly lower as you head further northwest. And what we can see is the mean there dropping to around about 1,012, 1,014 through the last third of June, fluctuating, of course, higher and lower, but perhaps just a little bit below the mean at times. So again, suggesting the chance of something more changeable, something more unsettled. This part of the UK, it's more likely, of course, to be coming in from the west, the northwest, from the Atlantic, basically. So that is something to keep an eye on. The air mass profile, another way of looking at it is the weekly snapshot. This is for the week beginning Monday, the 7th of June. It's UK is here. Doesn't really matter where the UK is because basically the whole of Europe is in a positive anomaly. It's above average, significantly above average, really across the entire western part of the continent. Jumping ahead to the next week, beginning the 14th of June, look at this. It's red again, all right across Europe there. So a big positive temperature anomaly being shown at the upper air level. Move forward another week, so beginning the 21st of June, there is now a change showing. The dark reds have been replaced by lighter reds and pinks, so the positive anomaly is waning. Nonetheless, it's still across the board above the 30-year average, so the signal there, according to the GEFS, is really quite strong. It's unusual, I think, to see this level of consistency, even in the ensembles. So, as I say, there's this ongoing theme of upper air temperatures remaining above the 30-year average. It's completely different to what we were seeing through much of April and May. So, all in all there, it's a warm theme. Precipitation's more uncertain, but with pressure fluctuating through the second half of the month, it would suggest some rain at times and possibly thundery interludes. So, to summarise the month, it's very warm and dry to begin with, but showery rain quickly pushes up from the southwest. Looks like being heaviest in the western half of the UK. Once it clears away, temperatures will dip a little bit for a time, but then later in the first week, it turns warmer once again. But there is just a chance of rain affecting southern counties for a time as that area of low pressure moves up from France. Week 2, on the whole, is looking warmer than average, often dry in the south and east, but there is a greater chance of rain in the north and west of the UK as the Atlantic has more influence for a time. Then the second half of the month, the takeout for that is temperatures probably often above the 30-year average. There should be good dry periods too, but there is a greater risk of it becoming changeable at times in the southeast, perhaps thundery intervals. In the northwest, the rain's more likely to be coming in from the Atlantic. So that really summarises it. I think as I say, the key things there, probably above average temperatures, variable amounts of rain. Overall, I think it's probably going to be drier than average, but there will be large variations across the UK. Thundery downpours, of course, can bring huge amounts of rain in very short periods of time to certain locations, whilst just down the road it stays completely dry. And in the northwest, possibly more typical precipitation patterns because of that greater Atlantic influence. So, thank you for watching this. I hope you found it useful and enjoyable. As ever, with these monthly forecasts, do remember that trends from the ensembles and computer models in general can change very, very quickly. So keep up to date with the short and medium range forecasts. Nonetheless, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons below if you enjoyed this. Thanks now. Bye.